People are excited about technology, and I think it's very clear after 40 to 50 years worth of focus on development that development is moving to a new paradigm of going bottom up versus top down. And in many ways, when we mention technology, hopefully it is geared towards amplifying that effect versus making top down stronger. And there are two, I think, themes we are going to discuss today. One is, where can technology go wrong? How can you prevent when you are trying to build this amazing technical solution? How can you go wrong? What would you do to inoculate yourself against that? And as somebody who works at Google, this is a very, very real problem because most of the kids we employ literally come from the ivory tower. They don't come from the real world. And the other challenge is the technology world can be so mesmerizing that it is very easy to get lost trying to do everything. And how do you keep focus? When do you know when you have done enough? And I'll start off with my own version of that. And it's not just mine, but it is something. And it's something that it's a mantra that we at Google live by, which is a day spent with the users is worth a year of research. And time and time again, we have seen that when we start with the users, everything else follows. The right solution comes up magically, and engineers get inspired, and it launches. And as long as we keep focus on the users, everything else, just falls into place. And the other thing is, when we are working in organizations, it's very easy to get lost in this effect, which is really a cognitive effect of celebrating too early. There's a lot of excitement when you come up with a new solution that you're building something cool and so on. And it's very easy to then get depressed because the solution that you imagine does not have the impact or does not even deliver for a very long period of time. How do you keep the focus? And I think the best way of putting it is, my PhD advisor used to say, you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. So pick one and then do it because you cannot do everything. But then he used to contradict himself by saying one more thing, which is that you haven't done anything until you have done everything. And what he meant by that was, you come up with this idea, you come up with this solution, you might even write the code, you might even do your thesis, but unless you stick with it and make sure it has the impact that you imagined or dreamed it would, there is no point you doing this. This is just a paper, and writing papers is not going to have any value to the planet. So those are the two principles that I have lived by, been taught by people much smarter than me, which have in many ways in my 10-15 years of building technical solutions have stood the test of time. But let's hear from the panelists about their own journey. Taigu, I'll start with you and ask you the question. How are you planning to use technology to really scale this? Because last time I talked to Ramji, he said he's very happy that you have reached a couple of million children already, but you're trying to figure out how to reach 200 million.
So the opportunity is there because, after all, the digital world and the fact that today a lot of knowledge is there in the stored space rather than in institutions and teachers gives us an opportunity to do that. But you've got to do that in a blended way. We talked this morning about the theme being what can go wrong. One of the things that I would like to mention here is, if you start off too early on a digital tablet or whatever with the child, you may be wiring it up wrongly. I think it's important to understand that children, like an infant needs the mother at one, and the touch makes the infant go quiet or get better. Even at the age of 9, 10, I think the neurons are wired together to have touch and feel as a better method of learning than watching a two-dimensional screen or a static teacher. And therefore, it's important to do blended learning rather than replace conventional or hands-on learning with purely digital tablet or computer-based learning. So that's one thing that we definitely need to avoid, and that's important. Later on, you might be able to do that with this thing. But the fact of life is 21st century. STEM learning or science, technology, or anything else that you want to would be student-centric. It will not be institution-centric. It will not be teacher-centric. It will be a student wanting to learn something, picking up from several multiple resources, the kind of things that he wants or she wants, and then get on with it. And then teachers or institutions will become one of those resources for them. To move towards this student-centric 21st century STEM learning, we have to start early, and therefore introducing digital technology into the classrooms early. So we do between 5th and 10th standard using the Techlabike program, for which we got the Global Impact Award, taking physical labs through a motorbike to remote areas with a teacher who's already been trained for both hands-on learning as well as introducing children to digital technology, and then spend 4 or 5 hours with them doing both, hands-on, and then getting into the digital aspects of it somewhat deeper into that. Let me also take this opportunity to mention what could go wrong, since that was a question that was focused on. Inclusion is very important. You can't run things forever parallelly if you want to scale to 200 million. If you want to scale to 200 million, something like the blended learning aspect, you need to get the teacher in that local school involved. Judging from how children pick up technology versus the speed with which teachers pick up, sometimes we get worried that can we achieve inclusion without a teacher becoming digitally or blended learning savvy? And that may prove to be a constraint for you to scale forever. And I think that's an important thing. Other than that, I don't see a great problem of content being available for blended learning. Those things, I think, are already keeping pace. There are a huge amount of resources there. I think it's the people dimension, the inclusion dimension, and to a certain extent, how ready we will be at an institutional framework level, which is the government. 95% of children even today go to government schools in rural India. And therefore, we need to make sure that the institutional side, the policy advocacy that's required, those may be slower. And therefore, that could be proved to be a constraint.
Thanks, Taigu. I think what strikes me when you're speaking and when I hear Ramji speak is Ramji loves to tell the story that there is this 100+ acre campus near Kuppam where he imagined he would set up this university where all the kids would come and study. And then he realized that you cannot educate India doing that. And then he also realized that the problem is not with the books, the problem is not having the kids touch. So clearly, Ramji, Taigu, you and your staff, you spend time with the kids, you spend time in the villages. I have seen the senior staff doing that. So you got the whole concept of spending, being with the users right. And I have not seen you lose focus over the years. If anything, the focus has deepened, that you have taken on the challenge of exciting all of India about science. Not just the kids, I'm seeing adults actually having an osmotic effect. So that's very powerful and in many ways embodies the principles that we are talking about. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate it.
Dr. Balaji. Well, I think the rest of us may have PhDs, but you're the real doctors. And Dr. Balaji, you are trying to solve this problem, which not just India faces, but the world faces, which is in the Western world, there's anywhere from 1:20 to 1:100 ratio between doctors and patients and population. And in India, if you look at it, we have 1:1000 or 1:2000. And the ratio is worse if you look closely at the number of qualified doctors we have. So how are you trying to crack this problem? What are the experiments that you're doing?
First of all, we don't have magic wand. One of the key things that we realize that you live with the resources that you have. Like you rightly said, first of all, we have a shortage of doctors. Second, that most of these doctors are concentrated in urban areas. And that compounds the problem for rural and tribal areas. It'll take a while for us to take them there. But there are means of taking them there. And how do you amplify a doctor's time is how we looked at it. For example, when we set up a health helpline, we leverage a ratio of 1:10 6 right now. But I think push comes to shove, we can do it 1:10 as well. But that what we are trying to do is we created a clinical assessment and decision support system from experienced doctors, from thousands of years of experience, all the professors. We picked it up and put it, embedded that in a system, which is available to a paramedic. When a citizen calls, the paramedic has an access to the protocols. For most of the diseases, there's not rocket science. Most of them are, I know doctors might not appreciate it, my colleagues, but they themselves told me that. But most of the problems are simple enough for them to handle. And then we use this protocol. So that way we have leveraged 1:5. So 5 paramedics to that. So that is one way of solving the doctor's problem. The second thing that we found, provided that we do truly get bandwidth and bijli. We can say bijli, bandwidth and babu are the problems that we have. Let's say we get bijli and bandwidth. We should be able to take the doctor to wherever we have this concept of anytime, anywhere doctor, with technology that we have today. So that's how we are able to deliver specialist services in a tribal area called Araku in Andhra Pradesh, in 142 villages. It's a blended model like Tyagu said. The last mile, we have motorbike-borne paramedics who go to the village, take the data on a laptop, and there's something called a docs in the box, like there's a lab in the box. We have something called a docs in the box. It's something like a few, something to call, easy to remember and talk about it. It captures data. It's got a 6-hour power autonomy. It picks up the data. They bring it to Araku center, where there is a GP is there, and the data is uploaded to Hyderabad, where the specialist can get in touch both with the GP, or if necessary, we send a jeep to fetch these pregnant women to come to our telemedicine center. So it's a stitching of solution wherever, it's a jugaad kind of a thing, bits and pieces wherever we have. It's not a truly 100% digital kind of a solution, but it does help, because it took me 6 months to 8 months to convince a specialist to go to Araku. We were willing to pay twice, 1.5 times the salary, 3 times the salary, but none of them were willing to go. So we said, fine, we'll crack this problem. So I have my obstetrician gynecologist in Hyderabad, the pediatrician in Hyderabad, and the GP in Araku. And from there, our motorbike-born people go to villages. Sometimes they have to walk 2 kilometers to 10 kilometers. But the question is, we're able to connect all of them, and we could bring down the IMR and MMR in these difficult areas. So technology we can use to amplify. The other thing that I also figure out is we can tremendously de-skill if we use technology. For example, the reason why we took a docs in the box is that I may not get a very competent person, well-trained person in the remotest area. If the system picks up most of the data from the patient, the vitals, so there's no chances of anybody making an error. So you tie the thing, BP is taken up, the temperature is taken up, or something else is taken up, the system automatically picks it up. It's unfair to use a word like I'm going to use. We idiot-proof systems in a way. So that way we can de-skill it, that allows you to scale.
The question that is at the top of my mind, I'm sure the top of a lot of the audience's mind, is this problem solvable? The problem of sustainable clean water for everyone in India and in the developing world, is this solvable? And what are the barriers you see in taking the solution you have and just deploying it everywhere?
Well, I would like to believe that this is something that is solvable, but this is not something that we'll be able to solve overnight. The success or the failure of this will entirely depend on one very simple fact. How much of community involvement are we able to ensure in the project? Now, most of our natural infrastructure for water, which is our riverways, our wetlands, groundwater, all of this has been polluted and destroyed by all of us as human beings. So our natural infrastructure for water which is available, one of the major contaminants that we find in that is you have untreated waste that has been going into that. Which is why our solution, what we have designed, and this is not something actually I can take credit for, because this is something that came up on the ground when we did our first project in a village, where we provided clean drinking water. And you just have to look, it's common sense. When you're there, it just stares you in the eye that you're giving clean water, but they're living in such unhygienic conditions. And what is one of the basic contaminants in the water? It's E. coli. You have so many children dying of diarrhea. None of us have to worry about water. We open up a bottle, we drink that water. We don't have to think twice, am I going to get amoebiasis when I drink this water? So the approach that we've really had is integrating the two, because I don't think you can separate the two of them, especially if you're looking at it as a long-term solution. So that is one element of our solution, looking at it as an integrated model. And whether I really think this will work in terms of scaling up, there is a huge desire amongst people for clean water. There is a huge amount of awareness. People are even willing to pay for that. A nominal cost, I'm not talking about exorbitant fees. But unfortunately, that is not the case when it comes to sanitation. Sanitation, I don't think, is a problem of lack of funding available. Neither do I think it's a problem of lack of access to technology. But there are huge mindsets, entrenched mindsets that you're dealing with, where they don't like the idea of coming out and using a toilet. That is one of the biggest challenges that I face, and that's why the integrated model works, because there's a huge demand for clean water. They want water, but they're indifferent to the toilet. So I said, okay, and some of the villages which I went to identify, they said, in Telugu, they said, Manchini levandi, bathroom anta uddu. That means, give us the water, we don't want toilets. It's unholy. I don't like a toilet in my village. I don't want it on community land. So we have chosen to work with panchayats and local communities who have agreed that, yes, we will get the water, but subject to coming out and using the toilet. Now, as far as the solution that we have designed, it is something that is scalable because, first of all, we have a template in place. It's ideal for village population size. The weakest link in this is what can go wrong is if you don't have people on board, because the technology, if it's not used by people, what is it? It's just a piece of junk. If technology doesn't transform lives, doesn't impact people, what's the point of that technology? So that is how we've designed a solution. I mean, using this model, we've produced over 2 million liters of water in a school in Delhi. It's worked. We're in the process of doing it in a rural setting. So it has been a different learning curve there. But I mean, I'm hopeful. I hope that it does succeed.
So thanks, Sancheta. One thing that struck me hearing you is when you hear that when you go to villages, they don't want a toilet, they don't want to use it, it's counterintuitive. Sitting here, it's counterintuitive that people would not be excited by it, right? And that's the whole point about spending time with users, where what is obvious to us is often wrong. It's not even that they are right or we are wrong or vice versa. What is obvious to us doesn't make sense. Brings me back to one example where I was in Afghanistan a couple of years back trying to understand users, and we went to these hillsides where the people are living in these mud huts, and everybody has, not everybody, 60% of the people have TV and a cell phone, 90% of people have cell phones, but they don't have electricity in their houses. And you wonder, what are you talking about? How can 60% of the people have TV, but only 20% have electricity? What they do is they draw that one wire so they can run their TV. They don't care about the rest. And in many ways, they are hungry to be connected to the world because they live in this misery, right? So to them, electric light is less important than being able to watch and being connected to the world. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is a common underlying theme in what Thaigu and Balaji mentioned, is we are often sometimes ignoring, because everybody makes it wrong, the elephant in the room, which can have a powerful positive effect if we harness it. And the elephant I'm talking about is the government, right? The government has I think two powers which took me at least a long time to understand. One is, if the government says something, everybody gets it. And even though everybody believes that the local politician is corrupt, at the same time, when the lion symbol is backed with a statement and the government says, for example, toilets are good or the internet is going to change your life, people just take it on faith and everybody believes it. And that kind of a power is worth harnessing, and it is very hard to work with the government because the government is many-headed hydra. It does many things, but once you can harness it, it has enormous power of scaling. And Nandini. So, talk to us about, you have built this technology. And actually, by accident, we were curating videos for kids and we discovered 10,000 of your videos on YouTube. And we found that, we never heard of your organization a year ago, but we discovered it when we watched your videos. So you're building this amazing database, knowledge base, which is completely open to the whole world. And it's open and available information. And when I hear your story, I'm reminded of this story, Hiware Bazaar, which is this village in Maharashtra, which completely transformed itself by using simple concepts of water harvesting and local crops and so on. But most villages in India have not transformed itself. How are you going from here where you have the solution, but people are not using it, to making sure everybody uses it?
I'd like to go back to the television example that you just shared. So, we were looking, when we were developing the model, we were looking at, okay, what does it take? What's the space? Video is a great medium to communicate about agricultural practices. So that was very clear to us. But then we have had Krishi Darshan, in our country for so many years. And people are crazy about televisions. People want to watch television. But is that really translating into change? How many farmers are actually watching a program, a Krishi Darshan program, and then going to their farm and doing something differently? Not very many. Is what we found. So then what we did was that we worked with communities to produce videos, and we built up a cadre of grassroots workers. Grassroots workers in the sense of people, farmers from within these villages who we train so that they can first of all use a pico projector. So they take a video and they put it into a pico projector, which is battery operated. It's accompanied with some speakers. And then that is the medium for the video to be shared. The video is then watched in small groups of farmers. So there are a lot of, we partner with government, as you again brought out, is that the government is working to build a lot of SHGs. There are a lot of non-profits who've done great work doing capacity building and community building. And so these SHGs are meeting every 2 weeks in a small group situation and watching the video. So that's where the change is happening. It's the grassroots worker who's there, who's playing the video, who's facilitating a conversation amongst the farmers, and who the farmer can go to after the video screening and say, oh, I didn't really get this. Can you show me how?
Yeah. So you mentioned there are two powerful nuances you seem to have discovered and harnessed. One of them is that the way India works, the way at least communities India works, is there is an expert for everything. If you want to buy a motorcycle, you might know that you want to buy the Hero motorcycle, but you will not buy it unless you talk to the local village expert about the motorcycle. So you're harnessing that. And the other thing that I think you are doing implicitly is you're creating these groups. And I noticed, I live behind a village in Bangalore. It's no longer a village, but it's used to be called Garuda Charpalya. And what I noticed about how they make civic decisions is that they all get together, discuss, make a decision. Once they make a decision, it's a decision that the entire village follows. And you're somehow harnessing that instead of people watching TV individually, watching together and discussing and deciding seems to be one way that you're making change happen. So you've figured out a formula that seems to work. Now, what is stopping you from scaling this? What gives you sleepless nights in thinking, how can we have this happen all over India?
So there are a few things that are working well. One is that the communities are producing the videos. So the more, I think that is a mentality that sometimes you have to work with our partners to, instill, which is that, farmer is not really going to watch an expert, and maybe a few will, but not very many. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we find to be a challenge. The other is, it's a lot of human processes layered over the technology that make the systems that we have currently work. And when we look at, how technology is evolving, that continues to be a challenge. How do we, technology isn't really, bandwidth has not really reached the last, farmer. And so one thing we're looking at is how can we support these facilitators, these grassroots workers more so that they continue to be the agents of change in their villages, but they're more effective and more empowered to do that.
Thank you. Rajesh, I think I would request you to give us a different flavor. You are sitting in a very advanced technical organization which does research which would intimidate many research firms from what I can see. But you are trying to bring change in that organization where instead of that organization, like in your own words, serves the top 80 or 200 million on the planet to go more broad-based and almost take 4 leaps forward and go from 200 million to 7 billion. Give us an example of what you are doing or what you have done to make that change happen.
Firstly, we are a scientific organization developing technologies which are demand-driven. So it only comes through demand, nothing else. Very less error there, to do that, because we rely on data, validated data, which we get, fortunately, from our community. And what happens here is the technology which we are offering has to have one component right. This is sustainability. We need to sustain our technology to make our brand more existent, to make Made in Germany brand also visible in the next 50 years. So we are all working day and night in this level of to prove this excellence is a very egoistic approach, so which might not be innovative for different reasons, And now your question is, how do I beam to a different target group, which is what I'm working now. When I came to Fraunhofer and I said, let's target India, let's make our researchers think very different, because now suddenly they have a market where things are very different in terms of price, in terms of usability. So how can we change this approach of thinking? And then we understood the challenges were not within the engineers back home, it was here. Because when we used to develop a technology, or when we are developing a technology, we have a significant human touch. An example is a waste segregation system. So everyone is talking to me, the industries are talking to me in Germany, they're saying, okay, do you want to downsize our technology and try to bring it to India? Just calculate the bill of equipments, reduce them, use the same black box, whatever it is. I said, no, that's wrong. We are trying to upgrade our technology, upsize our technology. An example is waste segregation, because we segregate waste in Europe meticulously, green bottles, brown bottles, tins, bio, whatever it is, paper, tins, So it is a huge process. We do it, and then a company comes in, takes the waste. They have a machine which makes into energy or whatever it is, or recycle this. But now when we try to bring the same technology into India, it cannot happen, because the waste is not segregated. And what we want to do is, we want to have a technology which is fully automated. And we don't want to pay a price for it. Fully automated technologies does not work out, even in Germany, So automatic cars are more expensive than the manual cars. Very simple, so because you need a human touch to do it, and it's much more easy to service it back. So when we're all talking about technology impact, when we don't want to change ourselves and have this human touch in any technology, we can make the technology much viable and much cheaper. So instead, there is a good saying in Scandinavia, I was very young, very clever, I want to change the whole world, but now I'm old and wise, I want to change myself, So let me first change myself in seeing things, and then supplement a technology with it, which can be of use, so then it works. We all work with technologies. We cannot say no, so from washing machines to anything, what we see. But we are talking about a new generation, a new paradigm shift which will happen in India. So it has to start with thinking, then with actions. And so this human touch should be propagated, you know. And so this conscious level of technology handling, which is very important. So as to cut short, you know, so we have to work on different domains, also in social domains and also in technology development, but not only in technology development.
Thank you, Rajesh. Speaking of people, I think like to ask Sapna. So Sapna, your organization started with a solution, which 5 years ago people would have said would have never worked. Which is you try to harness people and try to bring them into the mainstream political discourse. Now it is almost fashionable to talk about social media and fashionable to talk about the Aam Aadmi Party and how everybody is engaged and so on. But you started that movement. In many ways, you pioneered how the urban Indian who is completely carefree and only worries about themselves started getting into the mainstream. How did you do that, and what do you plan to do forward?
We started off about 12 years ago with the idea to get people to participate. And in the first few years, and I'm just cutting this long story short, we realized that I do think people are willing to participate. They do have a lot of energy to engage with the system, but there really was no means by which they could do it as a part of their daily life. So a lot of the engagement in the beginning had to be giving up 20 hours of your time per week to go and engage with government and trying to find solutions. Over the years, we have progressed our work into working with government for systemic solutions and change in governance, but also focusing on how do you create platforms for people to engage and platforms that can scale. So we do this in two ways. One is we're actually working in the grassroots and building communities, but also seeing that the urban Indian has so many, I would say, demands on his time that there has to be a way by which we allow a kind of a plug and play system, when it comes to your ability to engage with the system. I Change My City was started with that intent, to really create a platform that allows the citizen to connect with government, to talk about issues, to actually build communities, to bring people together on things which are very local, which is my street, my neighborhood, and how can I actually engage in at my local level. As we stand today, we have over 100,000 visitors to the site every week. We have complaints that have come, which are in the 7,000 to 8,000 category. We have resolutions which are about 50%. The challenges that we face as we build this platform is that one is, as a citizen, we all understand that there are many systemic issues, in governance. And what Janagraha is trying to do is to do a supply side reform as well as a demand side, participation. So what happens in this is we have problems that are running at 100 miles, and the solutions are like crawling at 4 miles per hour when it comes to governance, I would say, response. So if I have to look at how we would, what are the challenges that we face, it would be the response from government. People like to come and see that I've posted a complaint. I said my street light is not working. It's 3 days now and it's still not working, right? I need instant, I would say, response from the system. So that is one challenge, but also the education of the citizen itself and understanding that all problems cannot be solved in 24 hours. There are, many things that actually take time. There are budgetary constraints and so on and so forth. But I think more than anything, it's about creating, a way by which people come together and by which they can actually engage with government. In a way, we collectively solve the problem. So that's where we are hoping to go, and using technology as a tool and an enabler in that endeavor.
Thanks, Sapna. So having been a fan and user of the systems that you have created, I'll give you an example. There was a lot of construction noise in our neighborhood, and somebody filed a complaint. And what struck me is the clever way in which Janagraha has designed the solution to make sure that A, it works, and B, the citizenry is responsible. So once a complaint was filed, it required a certain number of votes before it was taken up by one of the Janagraha experts. And the expert was one among the citizenry that they had chosen. And once it was taken up, it was Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? The very act of Janagraha expert taking up that issue got attention to it from the government immediately. So it has a self-fulfilling effect. And the whole system is designed to engage, like you said. And in many ways, you are using technology powerfully to solve a very simple problem, which is allow the citizens to engage, enable them to engage, and then they are powerful enough to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
Because I would like to say the same thing that Gandhi said, which is 25,000 Britishers cannot stop 200 million Indians from being free. Similarly, a few thousand babus who are trying to get in the way, and not all of them are, which is why I'm saying a few thousand. The other million are actually trying to do their work. A few thousand babus or politicians who are trying to get in the way cannot stop a billion people from having their country run powerfully. So thanks for what you do.